You know what that means. It's time for your show, your favorite show and mine, Countdown to Armageddon with your host, Publius. Today I want to talk to you about executive orders. Many people in this country think executive orders are ways for the president to act without Congress. That sentence alone should tell you why they're wrong. But before I go into all that, let's talk about what an executive order is. An executive order is an order or something written by the president that has the effect of law. Where does the authority of this come from? Nowhere. See, what happened is way back when George Washington wrote the very first executive order, which was actually a presidential proclamation. This proclamation was basically, somebody died, they said, oops, somebody died, all our hearts go with you, that type of thing. Later, presidents started writing executive orders to command parts of the executive branch on how to behave. It wasn't until many years later that we started getting presidential orders or executive orders on how the public should behave. Now, two of these are legitimate. Sorry about that, folks. A little sneezing fest hit me. As I said, two of these are legitimate. Presidential proclamations, where the president is expressing on behalf of the people of the United States their condolences or their support of an individual. It's perfectly legitimate, as long as that proclamation doesn't require anybody to do anything. Second type, the president has every authority to issue guidelines and rules on how to implement the law to agencies in the federal government. They work for him. He's the boss. If the boss wants his people to wear a certain dress code, he's allowed to. It's that third one. It's the one where it starts where the president starts telling people outside of the federal government how they should behave, or flat out passing legislation. The president can't do that. There's no authority for the president to be the legislature in chief. The power to write laws was left solely in the hands of the Congress. So how did we get this? Well, first off, you need to go back in history. We've had several groups in this country that wanted to change things. They wanted the government to force people to do things for their own good. There's categories of things that fit this all throughout history. You have the person who said drinking is bad. You have had people that say gambling is bad. Several different organizations have sprung up throughout history to battle these sins that hurt other people. And when they were doing this, they looked and they realized that legally they would have to go through every state legislature and get their views passed there. That's a lot of legislatures. And if you're looking at buying the legislature, that's a lot of people to buy. 50 states, 50 legislatures, lots of money. They realized it was cheaper and easier to just convince a number of senators and members of the House. So what they did is they started working on them. The House and the Senate generally found themselves to be more than willing to do so. But occasionally, you got situations where the two sides in the House and the Senate didn't agree. They weren't going to pass this bill because they just could not agree. A very good example of this in modern times would be DACA, Defense Against the DREAM Act, as it's called. You know, for as much as people say that it's got bipartisan support, it's never passed Congress. It always gets shot down. So what they realized back then is, well, you know, maybe we can get the president to just act like it's real. So what they've done is they basically now have moved this platform and moved this situation to where the President of the United States says, well, Congress won't do their job, so I'm going to do it for them. And in doing so, you set up a dictatorship. Now, the U.S. has been under a dictatorship before. We had a dictatorship under President Lincoln. We've had quasi-dictatorships under both Wilson and FDR. So the idea of a dictatorship, in some cases, was actually supported by the population, because people like to have somebody in charge. They want somebody to do something. Whether it actually helps or not, they just want it done. So now we have President Joe Biden writing more executive orders in the first 60 days in office than any other president in history. He's on track to probably, I don't think he's going to take the number one slot total, because that's still probably be held by FDR. But he's going to bust the others because it's easier to rule by pen than it is to get a bill passed, especially if it requires spending money, because then you have to have 3/4 in the Senate. Sorry, 2/3. The thing is, presidents have found ways to get around Congress. They did it with executive orders. They also do it with an executive agreement. An executive agreement is just that. It's one leader of one country agreeing with another leader. But it's not a treaty. A treaty is a form of law. It's written out, the scope of it. It's been approved by both countries. It's legal and it's binding. An executive agreement is not. The Paris Accords, executive agreement. The Iranian peace deal, executive agreement. Why? Because it never passed Congress. It would be too easy for Congress to shoot it down. And when President Obama passed both of these things, the House part of the time was controlled by the Republicans, but all of the time the Senate was controlled. When he passed those, the Senate was controlled by the Republicans. And there was no way he was going to get that through. He knew it. So instead, he did an agreement, bypassing Congress. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't care which president does it. Executive orders are wrong. They are an abridgment of Congress. They are a violation of the Constitution. They are a power that the president has taken upon himself with no basis. And to put it in perspective, you hire a guy to come in and fix your plumbing. His people decide on their own they're going to go ahead and fix other things. The guy that's actually fixing your plumbing decides, well, I don't like the way this looks. I'm going to turn around and pull all your plumbing out and put brand new plumbing in with a more expensive type, but I'm not going to ask you. Why? Because I don't have to. You surrendered. Well, too often we do surrender. We've allowed the plumber to make the choices. And this plumber has decided he's going to rack up bills. And he's going to do what he thinks is best. We don't live in that type of government. We're not supposed to have. It's supposed to be restricted. Remember in the class on the Constitution, the government is only authorized to do certain things, not other things. When they wrote the Bill of Rights, one of the amendments that was put in specifically states, any power not specifically granted to the federal government belongs to the states or to the people. So, you can't just make up power. And the power of executive order to alter legislation is just that. It's made up power. The problem with these EOs is the way our legal system is structured right now. It's almost impossible for the average person to challenge an executive order. Not totally impossible, but very, very hard. You have to have lots of money. You've got to fight this bill, this action, executive order, and you got to get it fought all the way up to the Supreme Court. That is extremely expensive. And most people can't afford to do that. So these executive orders stand. Nobody says anything about it. The Democrats won't complain against the Republicans. Not enough to, go fight it. Because wink, wink, nod, nod. We know that when we get in power, we're going to do the same thing. So the only thing we'll do is we'll go out in the press and call you a dictator because you wrote an executive order. And meanwhile, the practice continues, and the rights of the people are slowly being eroded. If you feel this is right, then you have no problem living under a dictatorship. Own it. Put yourself a shirt on and say, I'm all for Dictator Joe, and go for it. Don't sit there and be such a hypocrite that you're going to claim that you believe in liberty, because you don't. Don't tell me you're trying to protect democracy, because you're not. What you're protecting is being a sheep. And I'm telling you right now, sheep always lose the vote to the wolves over who gets eaten. Alright, this has been Publius talking about executive orders. Hope you've enjoyed it. It's kind of short, maybe, but it's a try. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below or email me. If you've enjoyed this, please hit the like button, share button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button. If you want to support this, go up to the top. Go to the platform. There are ways to support this program so that you can hear more of what I have to say. And you can be a glutton for self-punishment. I don't mind. Other than that, you all have a great week and a great day. This is Publius signing off for the day. Thank you.